I wanted to just have this be a fun conversation because we got a lot of things we can talk about. Like I have a lot of things that I want to hear more about your story, because this podcast started out like the first 20 episodes was just want to be balanced, and it was all about like personal development, and I was Mormon, and I was just, speaking to LDS moms. That was like my demographic.
You started when you were Mormon.
Yeah. So 20 episodes in is when suddenly we're like questioning the church, and I just thought, okay, I'll just do. So I took like a break over the summer, and I thought, well, I'll just at least do one episode sharing with everybody that, okay, I'm no longer Mormon. And then I was just going to like move back on into personal development, overall personal development. But I couldn't stop talking about it for like 2.5 years. So
it's such a big change. Like it consumes you. There's so much healing that needs to go on. You need to tell your story. You have to analyze. It's not just, it's not like you wake up and say, I'm not Mormon. Okay, moving on.
Exactly. Yeah. So I changed the name to Mormon Enlightenment for a while when we started up the Facebook group. And just because I couldn't stop talking about it, I needed, like you said, I needed to get it all out. It was part of my healing process. And then just about 8 episodes ago, I transferred back into Want to Be Balanced. So I haven't been talking as much about the Mormon stuff, but and we kind of were talking a little bit about the ER shred and just overall personal development, because I'm doing life coaching now. And so back into personal development, but I also know that I'm going to continue to refer back to my experience from the church, because that's just such a big part of my story, and like the things that I've learned and how I'm continuing to learn. I like to compare my old mindset versus my new mindset. So this podcast now is just like everything. All of the above, Mormon stuff, ER shred, personal development, life coaching. So we're going to talk about, and I feel like with you, we could talk about all of those things. So I just want to know, first of all, more about like your background and how you guys started up the podcast, and how your like brief Mormon story, I guess.
Sure. Brief.
Yeah, I mean, can we get brief with that? But I don't want you to feel like you have to go into all of that, but I'm open to sharing, whatever you want to share, like, but we don't have to make this whole episode about your Mormon story kind of thing.
Sure. I'll give you the Cliff Notes, because if people want to get the down and dirty, like all of it, then they can listen to the podcast. It's LatterDayLesbian.com is where you can find it. Nope, that's a lie. Cut that part.
Okay.
It can be found at LatterDayLesbian.org.
Okay. Yeah, and you guys have how many episodes now?
We are at 107, 108.
Oh my gosh, we're like the exact same. I think this is 108. I think this is 108 or 109. Yeah, we started.
We'll probably get I bet you our menstrual cycles are at the same time too.
Yeah. We're totally synced. Yeah.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. Do you do one episode a week, or how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, we do one episode a week. There was a time where we were doing 2 episodes a week. We were doing like a 1 episode midweek where we would read fan mail. But it just got to be too much. I mean, people who don't podcast, I don't think really realize what a time suck it is. And people don't podcast unless they really enjoy podcasting. Because it takes a lot of time. Yeah,
it really does. It takes me like a full day to get an episode up, because I got to prepare, edit, do it, and then edit it, and then share it, put it on all the platforms. Yep.
Right. It's not like you just sit down and start talking and then it's out. Now, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But as far as my story, so born and raised Mormon, did all the things, got baptized. I was a little bit of a wild child in high school and the first couple of years of college, so I had a lot of shame and guilt surrounding that, because as a Mormon, I would even say a Mormon girl especially, there's so much demand on you to be a certain way so that you're acceptable to a returned missionary, so that he will want to marry you. You need to be pristine and clean and everything along those lines. I was actually molested when I was a child, and I think that kind of messes with you going forward. I had a lot of daddy issues as well. By the way, the molestation wasn't anyone within my family, in case people are like wondering. No. family friend. And so along with the daddy issues, I think came a lot of trying to get approval from boys and from men. So that kind of led me down the path of sexuality, which brought on the guilt and shame, because again, in Mormonism, that is a big, big no. And the whole trying to gain acceptance was, I feel, as a Mormon girl, I never felt as good as the boys, because the priesthood, passing the sacrament, all the fun stuff. My family was very traditional. Like, I was supposed to hang out with my mom and make pillows. I don't give a shit about pillows. Where I have 3 older brothers. I have no sisters. I have 3 older brothers, and they got to do all the cool dad things like camping, hiking. They got the priesthood. They got to go to elders quorum and all this stuff. And I was kind of stuck being around the girly things that it just wasn't me. I was a tomboy. I didn't want to wear a dress. Church was hell for me. It was torture because it was all girl. And I'm just not frilly. I'm not foo-foo-y. There's nothing wrong with being frilly foo-foo. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, I don't mean it to be derogatory. I didn't want to wear makeup. All the things. It just wasn't me.
Yeah.
After having, lived my life up until I think my sophomore year of college, I played 2 years of college basketball at small colleges. I was still wayward and crazy and living my life, but having all that guilt and shame, knowing I wasn't supposed to. Then I ended up going to BYU because my dad kind of snuck me in. I didn't have the grades for it, but he got me in. And of course, with that comes the ecclesiastical endorsement, which is, you have to have your bishop sign off and say, yes, you're worthy morally, and I suppose, to go to BYU. And at that point, I decided, wow, I really have to be this good Mormon girl. I have to do this. It's what God wants. I always, in the back of my mind, because I've been taught it my whole life, I believed that God needed me to be a certain way, and that was the only way to be happy. And so when I got to BYU, I'm like, okay, I have to do this. And so I basically dropped who I was, dropped everything I enjoyed. I used to love listening to rap music, and I used to hang out with friends, and we'd drink and we'd laugh. And I was very, very social in that aspect. I got to BYU and I had to drop it all. I couldn't make off-color jokes anymore. I couldn't swear. I couldn't be the loud one. I had to listen to a certain kind of music. I had to dress a certain way. I lived with 2 of my brothers who had just come home from missions, and I remember I wore like a just kind of a muscle shirt looking thing one day, and they said, "What are you doing? You can't wear that. No one's going to want to date you."
Oh my God.
So, yeah, everything came back to no one wants to date you. I remember I said shit one time in the house, and my brother was like, you can't talk like that. No one's going to want to date you. So
they would always refer back to that. No one's going to want to date you.
No one's going to want to date you. Right. And this, again, was like smacking me in the head of, you're not worthy. You're not worthy. And I had felt that way my entire life. So again, dropped all of who I was and became the Mormon girl. Right. Dressed like the Mormon girl, hair like the Mormon girl, because I knew I had to get married because, I was 22.
Oh
and
my,
that's getting old.
That's getting
right?
old.
And I also had like a sordid past, right? I wasn't a virgin. I had done all of the things. And so I knew basically, the first Mormon guy to accept that, I was going for it. Because I knew in my mind you have to get married in the temple and the eternal family. So I believed all that because that's what I'd been told from day one. And so I basically married the first guy that accepted that of me. Was not in love with him. Don't really have much in common with him, but I had dated some guys that kind of looked at me weird because I still wanted to sometimes listen to rap music or whatever. None of that was, not that my entire life was rap music, but you know what I mean? It was just this thing that I couldn't be that. So we got married in the temple, started popping out the babies. For me, every time I had another kid, it was like the big accolades. If you're a Mormon woman and you have kids, you have hit the top of the ladder of Mormon woman. Like, this is your divine destiny, motherhood. And I just kept going with that because I needed to feel fulfilled
Yeah.
and happy. And I wasn't. I was never fulfilled. I was never happy. I was going through the motions. I was acting like I had it together, but inside just freaking breaking. I ended up having 7 kids. 7 kids will
Wow.
wear out your entire soul.
Wow.
Yeah.
You are going straight to the celestial kingdom.
Oh, wow. I was birthing my way in. Like I was gonna get there. Because I also had all these people telling me, oh, you're having this beautiful, righteous, almost like a Mormon army. Like here I am repopulating the earth with these strong Mormon kids. Like it's so messed up. Saying it out loud, like, wow.
I know.
Jeez. And which also, by the way, made it so I didn't have the best relationship with my older kids at the time who were teenagers, because I was so focused on, okay, you have to go on a mission. You have to get married in the temple. You have to get into BYU. Like all these things, the route that you have to take to be accepted. And so anytime my kid would swear or would be disrespectful or would lie about reading his scriptures, I'd freak out because it was this fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose this child for eternity. And I'll look in my congregation as like, why, what happened? Why weren't you a good enough mom? So my kids were under a lot of pressure, and I have apologized multiple times since then to them.
I just like can't even imagine you like that. It's just so great because you just so like free and just like you, like 100% authentically you. I can't even imagine you pretending to be anything different.
Well, it literally broke me. It really did. Depression, anxiety. I felt trapped. Here I am, this mom of 7 kids, and I started homeschooling just after I birthed my 7th. Because we don't want them in those liberal schools, like crazy. I was gonna just make my kids these perfect Mormons, and couldn't handle it. No one can. No mom of 7 kids. Sorry if you think you're handling it.
I don't see how it's possible. Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, I lost it. I was losing my temper. I was yelling a lot. It just was so bad. And then my husband at the time, he started sort of looking outside of the church, kind of like a Denver snuffer sort of path. If you have any Utah listeners, they probably have heard of Denver snuffer. And so being a good Mormon wife, I kind of followed him that direction. I just was doing whatever he said to do still. And we ended up leaving the church. And then I started thinking about the whole gay, straight, trans, like all of those, the LGBTQ plus things, because of course, for me, being raised Mormon in the family that I was, in the time that I was, being gay was like a huge sin, equal to murder, or just slightly under. And I was all on board with that. I was so afraid one of my kids would be gay. I actually bought a book that kind of told you how to parent so that your kid would not be gay.
Oh, just in case?
Yeah. It was a book by a Mormon, and I can't think of it. But yeah, I was that brainwashed. It's just so crazy. So as soon as we left the church, and I started making friends at a new gym that I joined, and a few of them were gay, and it kind of was this realization of they're actually not bad people. They're just people in relationships and sharing their lives, and they're good people. And so in my mind, I thought, I don't think God cares if you're gay or straight. I don't think it matters at all. And literally right after that point, as soon as I let that hate and disgust out of my heart, I found myself being attracted to women. Just kind of,
like,
and then
finally,
I'm like,
I can just be free to be me.
It was kind of this, it was this recognition of, wait a second, and then I look back over my life and I go, oh my God, I've been gay this whole time, looking back at experiences and like who I was drawn to in friendships and everything. I'm like, oh shit, I've always been a lesbian. Of course, now we know that, you are born that way. It's not something that you
Yeah.
turn into. And at this time I'm married to a man, obviously, and nothing against him, but I never was attracted to him. Physically, I don't like the body hair and like the man scent. Not that it's gross, I just don't like it, like, because I'm a lesbian. And I told him, I told him eventually that I was attracted to women. And of course, his response is typical. He said, "Oh, you must just be bisexual." So I went with that for a while, thinking that must be it.
Yeah.
And finally, it was like, I can't. I had a specific instance where I was at the airport by myself, and I was getting in I was in the security check, and there were these two women in front of me, and they were a couple. And I was watching them, and they were so in love. They were holding hands and laughing and talking, and just this energy of love and happiness came off of them. And I thought, that can't be wrong. That can't
That
be
just gave
wrong.
me the chills. Oh, I just felt the spirit.
Aw, there's the spirit. Yeah, it gave me the chills too. Like,
Yeah,
whoa,
that is so
why can't
cool.
I have that? I'm
Yeah.
married to a man, and I am miserable, and it's not working, and we're not connecting. My husband and I broke up soon after we split, and I met my lovely girlfriend Mary online. And I don't know why she accepted my bio. My bio basically said, "Help, I was raised in a cult. I think I might be gay. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm probably going to delete this." And somehow that sucked her in. And she replied to that and basically said, "It's going to be okay."
So was she Mormon too?
No, she was raised like a evangelical Christian.
Oh.
But she's been out of the closet since she was like 19. So I call that a career lesbian. She wears that proudly.
Yeah.
But getting together with her, sharing emotions and feelings with her, the attraction, the physical, everything was just lightning bolts and rainbows and just the most amazing love. And it again concreted like, you're a lesbian. That's just all there is to it. You connect with women. This is you, which felt amazing, but of course brought on its a whole nother set of problems with, my family, and we can talk about that whenever if you want. But as far as starting the podcast, of course, when you start dating someone and you open up, you start telling them your story. And as I would tell her some of my childhood experiences that I hadn't really analyzed yet, she would say, "Dude, that is so messed up. What are you seriously?" And I'd be like, "Well, yeah, I mean, it's blah, blah, blah." "No, Shelly, that's not normal." There were so many things that I thought were normal.
Yeah.
And the more we talked and got to know each other better, she said, "You've got a story to tell. I don't know if it's a podcast or a blog or I don't know, but you need to get this out there." And again, I didn't see that yet. And I think a lot of people who leave strict religions, cults, whatever you want to call them, they don't recognize the trauma until they've really processed it. I didn't recognize all of my trauma. We finally started the podcast, and that really became my therapy. Talking about it, recognizing it, having like PTSD over things and not even knowing that was about to hit. We immediately started having people write into the show saying, "Oh my gosh, you're telling my story. I thought I was the only one." And that broke my heart. That broke Mary's heart, realizing this is not uncommon. And people who are in this position, they have no one to talk to. They have nowhere to go because typically their family is still in that religion. They think they're crazy. They think there's something wrong with them because they're the only ones. And for us, this podcast has been amazingly healing. We've met so many new people. I know that we have changed lives just in our wanting to be vulnerable and tell a story and just throw it all out there. Throw it out there, and people can relate, and people want to heal too. So it's been an incredible journey. Incredible.
There is so much power in sharing your story and hearing someone's story. Like, I never realized the impact of stories that people, getting an inside look into other people's lives. It's such a feeling of, you can just finally relax into knowing that, okay, there are other people who know and understand exactly what I experienced. Like my biggest thing when I first left was the dark night of the soul. Once I didn't it was like I questioned the entire universe. I first it was like, oh, the church is not true, not a big deal, thinking, well, there's still God and there's all these other things that I still thought was in place. But then suddenly within like minutes, everything just came crashing down. It was like, well, if that's not true, then how can this be true? And then like everything, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and it freaked me out. And I literally thought that I was dying from the intense emotion, and I didn't know if anybody could possibly understand what I was feeling. And I was like begging Sean to take me to the hospital, and I even so funny, I even begged him to take me to the bishop to get a blessing.
Oh, girl, you were
so desperate. I was so desperate. I'm like, anything, I just need somebody to help me. I'm so scared. But I mean, it took me like 3 days. I was in this intense panic attack that was just like, would not stop. And I thought I was going to die. And I was desperate for some relief. But I didn't know all the resources out there. I didn't know about Mormon Stories podcast. I didn't know that there were so many people out there sharing their story. Once I started to collect, all the resources, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is normal, and I will come out of it, and I will be okay.
Not only okay, but I'm going to be badass. Like, this is going to, that was one of my big realizations, because first there's anger. Like, I just wasted 40 years of my life adhering to these rules, doing something that I never would have chosen. I wouldn't have married a man. I might have had a kid. I don't know, but I wouldn't have had 7. And that's nothing against my children. I love them. I appreciate every one of them. But here I am, 40 some years old, probably 43 by then, divorced, no education, no job training, 7 kids, moving out into a little ghetto looking, scratch that, I don't want to say ghetto, moving out into a tiny apartment because that's what my husband can afford to put me in. So again, I'm still relying on him. 2-bedroom apartment. I can only have the kids over a few at a time. It was horrible. It really was. It was a huge life change. And the anger that came out of that was intense.
Oh.
I was lied to. I'm 40 something years old, and look at me. I have nothing. I don't have a career. You know where I could be in 40 something years if I had gone to college the whole time? Like, if I graduated, I dropped out of school as soon as I got married. Like, I can't do anything. I was angry. It took a while to get to the point of turning that around and say, I'm only 43 years old, and I'm out of that religion now, and I have the freedom to choose whatever I want to do. And these are the cards I was dealt, and this is where I'm at, and I'm going to go forward. It's not an easy place to get to. It can take some time. Some people manage it in a year. Some people, it's a lifetime of getting rid of that anger. But everyone heals on their own timetable, for sure.
But you're right. It's all about your mindset. Like, you could just be so angry, like, I can't believe I'm wasted 40 years. Or you could say, I'm only 43 years old. I got so much more life to live. I'm so grateful. I'm out of it at this age. And like, I'm just, like you said, it's like you start to shift the way you tell the story, and you start to realize how it feels much better to tell the story in a more empowering way. Like, I am so damn proud of myself that I got out of that. And I'm actually really proud of all of it now. Before I was like, you probably can relate, just like, you cannot see anything good that came from that. And you're so upset and you're so mad. But then you start to get to a place where you're like, oh my gosh, that was so essential for me. Like, all of it was essential for my growth. And to have this realization, I would never know what I know now if I didn't experience being in the church. It just kind of gives you this bigger perspective.
I agree. I for some reason, this always sticks in my mind, and I don't know what scripture it's from, and I don't even know if I believe in scripture anyway, but it's something about to help, or your weakness becomes a strength, or something along those lines. And so I can look at this like shit growing up that I had, this Mormon culture that just molded me to something that I wasn't. But now that I'm through it, I can use that strength of making it through to help other people as they're trying to get through it. And for me, there's so much fulfillment in that. The fulfillment that I never had being a Mormon wife and mother has now changed into helping others get through. And if people listen to my podcast, if people listen to our podcast, Mary and I, when you started episode 1, you'll see a lot and you'll hear a lot of emotion and there's crying and there's anger, and it's very raw because I'm just starting to talk about it, just starting. And then you've got Mary, who's kind of doing interview style with me, and she's asking questions from someone who's never been a Mormon. And as I'm telling her, it's more of this realization of how brainwashed and how crazy and how like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I believed this. And so people who start listening, typically they're in that same spot of anger and disbelief and sadness, but as you keep going through the podcast episodes, there's definitely a change in me. I felt it. You can hear it. It just becomes more of happiness and more of, I don't want to say making fun of Mormonism, but kind of making fun of Mormonism, meaning you're getting the laughter instead of crying over something that you believe. You're now like, oh my gosh, the Liahona, are you kidding me? Like a brass ball, the blah, blah. And people really appreciate being able to laugh through their trauma. It's a huge thing to be able to do and help healing.
I agree. And I know that it can be seen as offensive. That's why we, our funny things, that we try to keep it in our Mormon Enlightenment group. So we're not like posting, we did a few things like publicly that was like that. Now I look back and be like, maybe that wasn't so nice, but we try to keep it within our Mormon Enlightenment group, and because it feels good to laugh about it. But Mormons can look at that and be like, oh my gosh, that's so disrespectful. Why would you do that? And I'm like, yeah. And I kind of feel a little bit of shame, but I'm like, no, but this is like, I'm not doing it for you guys. I'm doing it for the people who are trying to heal, and we're trying to find humor in this whole thing because it really is important to find humor in it, I think.
Yeah, I posted a picture that Mary had made. She's an amazing graphic designer. I posted this picture of Hitler wearing temple clothing. And so, that wasn't really appreciated by my still LDS friends and family. I wonder, Crystal.
No.
Get over it. It's funny. Jeez.
Yeah. Sean and I did a little video wearing our temple garb, but only posted it we were so tempted to put it on YouTube, but we're like, no, we got to keep it in the Mormon Enlightenment Facebook group. But it was like, we were dying laughing at how much fun we were having, just doing everything in the temple garb.
Oh, heck yeah. I love it. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That reminds me, when I was in Utah a while ago and I was helping my parents get moved into a senior care facility. And I just announced on Facebook if there's anyone who can help out, meet it, whatever. And strangers I had never met, but who listened to the podcast, they showed up to help, which was amazing to me. But one of the people said they would take a load of stuff in their car to drop off at the storage unit. We had a big storage unit for my parents' stuff because they were downsizing. And so we loaded it up and they go, and then I get a video from her, and they had found my dad's temple clothes. And her and another girl had dressed up in his temple clothes, and they were like in the storage unit. It was hilarious. It was so funny. The one girl was like, I've never worn men's temple clothes. And it was very sacrilegious, but whatevs. I mean,
whatevs,
and I did not post that publicly though. It stayed in the Latter-Day Lesbian podcast discussion group. For sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So tell me a little bit about, real quick, how is your family with everything now? And how many years has it been for you since you left?
Gosh, it's probably been 5, I would say.
Okay. And so first start with your kids and then tell me about your siblings and your parents.
Sure. So my kids, my daughter, who was 12 at the time, I started wearing tank tops around the house, and it freaked her out because she would say, Mom, you're not supposed to show your shoulders. And those were some moments where I was like, oh my gosh, I am raising judgmental little shits. Like, she's going to call me out and tell me I'm not being appropriate. I'm going, oh my gosh, no, I can't do this. It took her probably 6 months to sort of deal with that, because she was in it, because she was a Mormon girl. They throw it at you from go, telling you about modesty. My older sons, they didn't care. They thought it was boring anyway. And then my younger kids, they don't even remember it. My oldest is 21 now, and my youngest is 7. My 3 youngest were never baptized. My 14-year-old was baptized, but I didn't want that to happen. It just was we were sort of straddling the fence. I didn't believe anymore, but the parents were already coming out for the baptism. So he's 14. He was baptized at 8. There's your math. That's about when we like officially left. They're fine.
Yeah.
They are also totally cool with me being a lesbian. I was very concerned that they would have issue with that just because they had been raised partially Mormon. And you never know. You never know. And I remember the day that I came out to them, I basically told them what was up, and they were like, cool. And I was so afraid that I had traumatized them. Because my ex-husband at the time told me I was going to traumatize them by telling them.
Oh.
So I had all this fear.
Yeah.
And I told them, they were like, whatever, cool. And then we got in the car, I was going to take them to a movie, and we're driving, and they've got the music blaring, and I would turn it down and say, guys, do you want to talk about this? Do you have any questions? No, Mom, we're fine. I kept turning the stereo down like 5 times, asking them if they need help. Finally, I turned it down. I said, listen, you guys, I can like get you into therapy if you need to talk this out. And my, probably 16 at the time, he goes, Mom, you're gay. You're not an axe murderer. It's fine.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I love those kids. They're like, whatever, you're gay. And so they're cool with it. My family, at first my parents were, my dad wanted to give me a blessing, probably pay the
cast out the
pray
demons.
the gay away. Yeah, I wouldn't allow him to do that. I'm like, no. Then that was the whole, it's okay to be attracted to girls as long as you don't act on it. Okay, well that I acted. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. And then there was the sending me the links to the church's website, like Mormon and Gay or whatever, which basically says you can be gay, just don't act on it. Same thing.
Yeah.
And it has like testimonials of gay Mormons who don't have a partner. I don't know. No, not interested. Then there was the stage of them never mentioning Mary, even though Mary and I were a couple, we lived together. They knew of her, they'd met her before. But if I ever talked about her on the phone, they would change the subject. I never heard them say her name. And then finally I thought, this is bullshit. I need to set a boundary here. I'm not this stupid little, I don't want to say stupid. I'm not this little girl anymore that won't stand up to her parents. And so I called them one time and I said, listen, I don't know if it's like a weird Mormon thing, the reason you won't accept that Mary is my partner and that we live together. Like, I don't know if you just don't want to talk about it because then it doesn't exist. But just, if you don't start involving Mary in conversations and acknowledging that she and I are together, don't bother calling me anymore. Like I was that strict with it because at that point they didn't call for probably a week or so. I think they had to like process. And then from that point on, they would ask about Mary, tell her we said hi. They called her on her birthday and sang happy birthday to her. They sent her cards.
How nice.
The one card said, thank you for being such a good friend to Shelly, which I thought was funny, but whatever. They acknowledged her.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. I know, but I am very appreciative of that because they are super Mormon. Like my dad was a stake president, mission president, worked for the church office building. So this has been hard for them. But as long as we're talking about like health, I think that setting boundaries with people who bring you down is one of the most important things you can do. And I look at that boundary I set with my parents, and had I never set that boundary, they would have never had the opportunity to analyze what they were doing and their thoughts and decide, you know what, I love my daughter. I want her to be happy. I will include Mary. Yeah. And now they love Mary. So boundaries. That's what I've learned. You don't have to feel guilty over setting a boundary, and a boundary, in my mind, actually gives the other party a chance to make a change that will help you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think where we go wrong with boundaries is we think that they will follow all of our boundaries and they will change because we've told them to. But I think like you explained it perfectly. You said, if you don't start acknowledging Mary, then don't bother to call me. Like that's a perfect, clear and concise boundary. And it's not like getting all immature and upset and angry and causing conflict. You're just setting a clear boundary calmly, and that's it. And you're right. I like it. Could cause them to really do their own introspection and think, am I being a little too, maybe they can make some shifts, but we also have to remember that we hope that everybody will follow these expectations that we have, and oftentimes they don't. So we just have to like release the expectation that they're gonna like
Yes.
do it
And
exactly.
if you never want to be disappointed, then don't set an expectation. You can set the boundary, but don't expect them to follow it.
Yeah.
The great thing I think about a boundary is it's one of those like set it and forget it,
Oh,
right?
I
You
like that. Set it and forget it.
right?
Yeah,
Set it and
yeah.
forget it, because now they get to react. They have every right to react, and I can't make them react the way I want to. They have their own agency as far as what they want to do. But once that boundary's set, you're like, cool, go on with my life, and they can do what they want with it. Obviously there's the whole, if they break the boundary, then the reminder and maybe even more strict with that. But I had to do that. It was breaking me down. It really was. And every time I talked on the phone to them and I'd bring Mary up and they'd change the subject, I got more and more resentful of them.
Yeah.
And if you don't tell someone how they need to treat you, and they keep treating you poorly and you get resentful, it's almost like, well, you can't be mad at them. You never told them how to treat you. So
Right. Like that reminds me of this one little boundary that we set a couple years ago. We, for the family parties, we just were in such a space where it was just too much for us to have to go and have to like be there during a prayer for the dinner.
yeah.
And so we're like, it was like giving me anxiety to be in that position. And so for me, I was like, Shauna, I just don't want to be there during the prayer. Like, I just can't do it right now. Maybe down the road, it'll be like, oh, no big deal. But right now I just cannot do it. And, but I don't know, I'm not going to say, you can't say a prayer in front of us. But so what we did, try to have like a boundary, but also kind of give and take. So we just said, hey, we're just going to come a little bit late so that you guys can say your prayer, and then we'll come right after, so that there's no awkwardness, there's no resentment building up in us, like, why are they forcing us to be a part of this, and thinking they're doing their missionary work, so we just let that, we kind of said that in the beginning. It was perfect, because then it was like, it didn't have to we didn't have to carry any resentment, because we could be open about it. And then his parents could be like, okay, yeah, sure, we can say the prayer before you get there. And it worked out just perfectly. So I liked that we were able to do that, because the thought of having to do that for me was just too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Too much. Yeah, absolutely. I also had to tell my dad, please don't send my kids anything for their birthdays that has BYU on it, or that you bought at Deseret Book, because that's the only place he shops. You just little things and big things. And if you don't ever say it, how are they going to know that it bothers you?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Boundaries.
So now you and Mary have been together for how many years?
3 years.
3 years. Yeah. Awesome. And does she have kids?
It's my longest. No, this is my longest relationship next to my 21-year marriage. She just gave me stank eye from across the table. No, she doesn't have any children. So, suddenly taking on a girlfriend that has 7 children has definitely had its troubles. She's not used to it, and I totally get it. And I also was very sensitive. Like, if she said something like, oh my gosh, kids are so loud, in my mind she was talking about my kids, and I'd say, my kids, they're just normal. And this is and it took a while for me to be like, oh, and for her to remind me 1,000 times, oh, she's not saying my kids, she's saying kids in general, because it's hard for her. She needs peace and quiet. She's a very even-tempered person, doesn't get super excited, doesn't get depressed, just sort of chill. Like, she's kind of a rock. She's a rock. But because she's never had kids, she doesn't appreciate the insanity that comes with them. And I don't either, actually. So we've had to make some adjustments in our relationship as far as the kids go. It's been great, but it took a lot of talking and understanding and not instantly defending yourself.
Yeah. Do you find though that you guys, is it like now realizing that you're more compatible with a woman, do you feel like, wow, this communication level is way different, even like, because there's always the attraction level, but then like, as far as like the emotional connection that you have with her, do you feel like it's such a difference in in
It's
like,
huge.
yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. I look back at my marriage and there was never a connection.
Oh,
We got along for the most part. We worked well together for the most part. We accomplished things, but a connection just wasn't there. And I kind of recognize it, but I really recognize it when I got together with Mary, and it was this like pull of my heart. Like I didn't ever want to be an inch away from her. It was just because the energy was so exciting and peaceful all at the same
yeah.
time. I don't know, like exciting and comforting.
Hmm.
And the communication I think that we have is incredible. We'll talk about anything and everything. Um, it's just been great. It really has. And I don't want to say that's a lesbian thing, but it might be a lesbian thing. I'm just
It might be.
saying.
Oh, that's so funny. I think that like there are big differences with men and women, but I also think there's just like you said,
Mhm.
like there's just like a masculine and a feminine energy. And I think when you come
Yeah.
together in relationships, you figure out how to balance them out within each other. And I feel like
Yeah.
for Sean and I, it's taken us at least a decade for us to balance out some of these the masculine and the feminine, and I
Mhm.
feel like that sometimes it's just a matter of time to figure out how to find that sweet spot of
Yeah.
communication where he can connect more to his feminine side, and vice versa,
Mhm.
where we can just kind of be there more integrated with each other,
Yeah.
as opposed to just kind of like bashing, like
Yeah.
always in conflict about things. But it's like, no, how do we like come together? and
Together.
and I really do
Isn't
think it's
it
like balancing the feminine and the masculine. Yeah.
for sure? And isn't it great that Sean feels comfortable embracing his feminine side, because I think in a lot of these patriarchal religions, that's not okay.
Oh
The
no.
men
Yeah.
are the strong ones. You don't cry,
Yeah.
you don't go to therapy, like you are a rock, like
Yes.
nothing touches you. You don't cry, you don't all that crap. And I think a patriarchy is shitty for women, but it's shitty for men too. It
Right.
makes
I mean, I never
them
saw Sean cry our entire marriage. He
yeah.
cried a little bit on our wedding day, which was cute, but like in a, like just
Hmm.
kind of seeing the emotional side of him, I
Yeah.
never really got to
Yeah.
see until we left the church. And
Yeah.
suddenly it's like he can be free,
Yeah.
and I love that. So it's been
Yes.
really amazing for our relationship as well.